A routine concrete delivery turned into a nightmare when Thomas's truck stalled beside an upscale boutique district. With his load beginning to set and his job on the line, a woman in a gleaming SUV blocked his only escape route, refusing to move despite his desperate pleas. The moment she told him to know his place, something inside Thomas finally snapped. His next action would change both their lives forever. The summer sun beat down mercilessly on the concrete mixer as Thomas sat trapped in gridlocked traffic. He drummed his fingers nervously on the steering wheel, watching precious minutes tick by on the dashboard clock. What should have been a straightforward 30-minute drive had already stretched well past an hour, with traffic barely inching forward. Every delay brought the concrete in his mixer closer to setting prematurely. His phone rang for the third time in 15 minutes. Thomas winced as he answered, already knowing what was coming. His supervisor boomed through the speaker, demanding updates and throwing threats. The boss reminded him that this wasn't just any concrete, it was for their most important client. If it set in the drum, Thomas would be personally responsible. 15 years of driving experience had taught him to handle almost any situation, but today was testing his limits. The massive truck rumbled beneath him, its drum constantly rotating to keep the concrete from setting. Thomas knew that time was his enemy. Concrete waits for no one. As he approached the final intersection before his destination, the truck suddenly shuddered. Warning lights flashed across the dashboard. Thomas felt his heart sink as the massive vehicle lurched and then stalled right in the middle of the road, adjacent to a row of exclusive boutiques where the city's elite did their shopping. He immediately called his supervisor to report the situation. The response was even more hostile than before. His boss was now shouting, telling Thomas that the thousands of dollars in potential losses would come directly from his paycheck. While keeping the engine running to rotate the drum and prevent the concrete from hardening, Thomas stepped out to assess his options. He needed to get the truck moving soon, or everything would be lost. The concrete, possibly the equipment, and almost certainly his job. That's when he noticed a gleaming black SUV pulling up directly behind his mixer. The vehicle was immaculate, clearly expensive. Thomas watched as a woman stepped out, dressed in clothing that probably cost more than his monthly salary. Thomas approached her quickly, waving his arms to get her attention. He tried explaining that his truck had broken down and that he needed the space behind him clear in case he needed to be towed. But the woman merely glanced in his direction before turning away, acting as if he were invisible. Without acknowledgement, she locked her luxury SUV and walked straight into one of the exclusive boutiques. Minutes began to tick by, agonizingly slow. Thomas paced nervously beside his truck, watching the temperature gauge climb steadily toward the red zone. He was caught in an impossible situation. Turn off the engine and lose the concrete for certain, or keep it running and risk serious damage to the truck itself. Sweat poured down Thomas's face as he continued to watch the boutique entrance. The truck's engine was now making an alarming knocking sound, and the temperature gauge had pushed well into the danger zone. After what seemed like an eternity, 40 minutes since she'd entered the store, the woman finally emerged. She carried several shopping bags, which she casually placed in her SUV. Thomas felt a surge of relief, expecting her to drive away. Instead, she closed the SUV door and turned to head back into the boutique. Was she seriously planning to leave her vehicle there even longer? Thomas rushed toward her, desperation evident in his hurried movements. He explained that his engine was dangerously overheating, that the concrete was approaching the point of no return, and that he just needed her to move her car for 5 minutes so he could get his truck to a safer position. The woman stopped and looked Thomas up and down. Her response cut through the humid air with chilling precision. She informed Thomas that his delivery problems weren't her concern. Some people, she explained, had actually important things to do. The implication was clear. His work and livelihood were beneath her consideration. Thomas felt something tighten in his chest. Something about this woman's casual cruelty struck a deeper chord. He tried once more, his voice strained with the effort of remaining professional. He explained that he would lose his job, that the equipment would be damaged, that he just needed 5 minutes of cooperation. Her response was even more cutting. She suggested that perhaps if he'd chosen a better career, he wouldn't be in this predicament. His poor planning, she insisted, wasn't her emergency. At that moment, Thomas's phone rang again. His supervisor was beyond furious now, screaming about termination and the thousands in liability costs Thomas would be personally responsible for. The mechanic in Thomas knew he had only minutes before the overheating caused permanent damage. He needed to shut down immediately, but that meant the concrete would begin setting. Thomas was trapped between destroying expensive equipment and losing his career, or finding somewhere to discharge the load. Thomas had reached his breaking point. With his job slipping away and thousands of dollars in damage imminent, he asked the woman one final question. What did she expect him to do if the material spoiled and his truck was damaged? The woman's response was the final straw. Adjusting her designer sunglasses with manicured fingers, she told him he could pour it on his head for all she cared. But if one drop touched her car, she would sue him into oblivion. Some people, she added with a smirk, simply don't understand their place. There it was, the moment something changed in Thomas. Years of disrespect, mounting pressure, and this blatant mockery pushed him beyond reason. The truck needed to be emptied to save it from damage, and she had just given him the perfect target. With mechanical precision, as if completing any normal delivery, Thomas climbed into the driver's seat, adjusted the controls, and then positioned the delivery chute. The massive metal tube swung smoothly through the air until it hovered directly above the gleaming black SUV. Without hesitation, Thomas released the valve. Thick gray concrete cascaded from the chute, landing with a heavy splat on the roof. The viscous material spread quickly, engulfing the windshield, flowing over the hood and pouring down the sides. Bystanders gasped as they recorded the incident. Within moments, the $120,000 SUV was disappearing under industrial-grade concrete. The woman, hearing commotion and screams, rushed outside to witness the destruction of her prized possession. Her horrified shriek cut through the air as she frantically called the police, gesturing wildly at Thomas and her rapidly vanishing vehicle. Police arrived within minutes. Thomas made no attempt to flee or resist. He was handcuffed and placed in the back of a patrol car, his expression still eerily calm. What happened next, however, was anything but predictable. When the case reached court several weeks later, Thomas's attorney presented security footage from surrounding businesses, and it showed everything that happened. Multiple witnesses testified about Thomas's visible distress and the woman's deliberate prolonging of his predicament despite understanding the consequences. The judge, after reviewing all evidence and witness testimony, delivered a stunning verdict. Thomas was found not guilty by reason of extreme provocation. While property destruction was normally inexcusable, the extraordinary circumstances constituted a rare exception. The final blow came when her insurance company denied her claim, citing her documented misconduct. As she left the courthouse facing a ruined vehicle, she encountered something new: public recognition, but not the kind she craved. Video of the incident had gone viral, with millions supporting Thomas. For perhaps the first time in her life, she understood the consequences of treating others as beneath her dignity. The concrete had set, much like the lesson she would never forget. Have you ever been pushed to your breaking point by someone who refused to show basic human decency? What would you have done in Thomas's situation?